for you to achieve. I have the Third Eye Visions Unlimited, so I'm giving you Third Eye Visions Unlimited meditation movements. Third Eye Vision. What part of you do you need to die and bury in order for you to rise to the right hand of the Father? What part of you do you need to put in the tomb and let that roll away so you can rise again? This is part of what we also share, that other part of the information. All of us have some habit we're trying to get rid of, so we can then make space for a brand new habit that we need to learn and implement to be better at whatever we're doing. Whether it's personal, religious, relationship, business-wise, we always have to have some old part of us that we need to put in check or subdue or get rid of altogether. For some people, I mean, brother, he's trying to quit smoking. I said, okay, since you want to get rid of that habit, that's something we need to crucify, so to speak. That needs to die in order for the new habits and the healthier part of you to be around. He has a young grandchild, she's 3, and he's like, look, I want to be around for her wedding. I want to be around for her wedding day. So I need to change some habits if I'm going to be around, because the doctors are not giving me some good prognosis right now. So that's what we mean by looking at death, burial, and resurrection, and the T in a different way, the cross. Okay? So that's just a little Third Eye Vision funded experience. All right. Thanks.
All right. So what I want to do is I want to open us up with some breathing. All right, some breathing exercises. All right. A lot of times in our community, a lot of our issues that we have with our health, a lot of it is rooted in our breath, in the breath work. So most of the health issues in our community, almost 90% of them, body.
Elbows out, and that's what you're doing.
Yeah,
this is you at the waist, at the hips.
Yeah.
And the legs.
People who have back issues, back pain,
hip
this
problems.
is one of those things. Hip problems, you can loosen up all of those different areas.
This is what it looks like. So you're always looking forward of your elbows, rotating around. This is twisting you at the waist. When you do this, this loosens up stagnant energy in your lower abdominal, your back, your hips, okay, and your stomach area. So this improves digestion, not just your flexibility, and also it improves the energy flowing to your kidneys in the back. Some of us have kidney problems or kidneys not working properly. This stimulates your kidneys right there in the lower back area, above the waist. Okay? So it looks simple, but it's very effective. If you do this for 3-4 minutes a day, you'll notice a big difference in your life. Just keep twisting slowly as you breathe in and breathe out.
Clear hearts, clean hands, right? So I listened to an artist named Midnight. And one of the things he says is clear heart, clean hands. If you can't do that, just do the best that you can.
It's just, last night I was with Forrest Whitaker. Forrest and I worked together. And anybody ever seen The Godfather?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Well, I'm the historical consultant on their project. Right? And so last night, Forrest has 3 refugee camps, one in Colombia, one in Uganda, and one in southern Sudan. So once a year, he does a gala fundraiser for those refugee camps, where we teach the children skills so that they can go out and start their own businesses and make their own jobs. And then the other part of it is we call the youth peacekeepers. So we teach the young people how to make peace between the different tribes who have issues. And it's better to have someone from that tribe trying to bring peace than for me to go from America trying to talk about peace among the community. And so last time we had one of the young peacekeepers from Uganda, one from Colombia, one from southern Sudan, and one from South Africa. And Whoopi Goldberg chaired it for us. And so we had a good evening, raised about $300,000 for the project. And that there's always forces trying to stop us. Let me have you brought my jacket? And we've got to be aware that we live not only in a physical world, but actually the physical world that seemed to be the most significant world for us is the least significant of the worlds that we live in. And the world that we predominate is the spiritual world. But we're in a culture that don't teach us to really respect or understand our spiritual world. And so we rarely focus on the spiritual except to reference it. And we don't really understand that we're more spirit than we are matter. Matter of fact, the matter was produced by the spirit as a housing for the spirit. And when the matter wears out, and we call it dead, and we bury it and have funerals and things, the spirit doesn't go anywhere. The spirit has been here. My grandparents used to say something, been here, says been here, been yonder. That means it's always been here, right? When you've been here, says been here, been yonder, you've always been here. And so there is a spirit that is African. But even African is a new word. And it's not a European word, by the way. That word comes from our own people. But we never named ourselves that. White people named us that. That was just the name of one tribe, Afriye. Okay? But when he came and met us, he met us in what is now Algeria and what's next to Algeria? No, the little country in the north. And so that's where the Europeans, the Germans coming out of Spain met us, and then the Romans and the Greeks met us. So that's the name they found. So they call everybody that. We were Afriye. But Ka is a Roman acronym for land. So he said we were going to Afri land, where the Marouche lived. That's where the word Moors come from. Black, the word meant black, Greek word for black. So they went to Afri land, where the blacks lived. That's how this name derived. But later when the Arabs and the Europeans came with the trade, they just named all of us. They just said, okay, that's for the whole land. But we never named the whole continent anything. Even that concept of Kibulan, that ain't right. You know, we simply call this Earth. But whatever language we speak, we call it the Earth. Go to any country, the most sacred name for where they live is Mother Earth. Okay? Because there's only two things of significance in the world: cosmology and ecology. All right? Cosmology and ecology. And we were made up of both. Cosmology give us the light and the energy, and ecology give us the minerals and the substance. When you fuse those two together, you got an us. You know? But people, we eat food all day long and we don't realize we're eating dirt primarily, right? Everything you eat, you say, well, it came from the seed. No, the seed got everything that made it a carrot from the dirt. The collard greens got everything that made it the collard greens from the dirt. The beets got everything that made it the beets from the dirt, and the light from the cosmology. We get light from Mars, Jupiter, the sun, the moon. Everything in the cosmology is centered light. Some of the light that we're absorbing right now took billions of years to get here. But we absorb that light and we become that light. And so our ancestors are very clear that they were a part of the total being of the universe. We weren't a separate thing. It's Christianity, Judaism, and Islam that created these separate, God up there, you down here, the angel over there. No. There's only one thing that exists. We're just a part of the one thing. The Ghanaians had it right. Like on the back of my shirt, it says Jinyani. Nothing exists but the divine. So what are we? We are aspects of that existence. Each of us is an aspect of that divine existence. So what are we doing? We've got to deal with our practical reality. Sometimes we get off in, well, I'm just talking and we get so far out into space, we don't know how to elect the mayor in the town we live in or the city council person. We don't go to the school board meeting. We don't attend PTA meeting, and we wonder what's wrong with our children. You've got to be in the moment of what you're living. You got to be in the moment of where you're living. If you're not involved in the practical, fundamental, economic, politics, and culture of where you live, you're not involved. Culture is not a dress. Culture is not a dance. Culture is not a drum beat. Culture is not music. Culture is not drama. Those are all the tools of culture. Culture is the idea of how you understand cosmology and ecology and how it affects you and how you use that affection to create the environment that you live in. That's what true revolution is about. I know my brother, I'm meeting the taino. I'm from the Chicora Nation in South Carolina and the African Nation that came to South Carolina. People are arguing now about immigrants coming to America. We're finally taking our damn land back. We may speak Spanish, but that ain't our language. We're taking our home back. They don't know who we are. They're so silly in their racism. They don't know who we are. We've come to take our land back. This is our property. The divine gave it to us. We share it with anybody in the world, but don't come and abuse the land and abuse us in our land. And then throw us out of our land, and then when we come back, they say we don't belong in our land. Okay? And so we've got to be those straight on who we are and how we are. Okay? We know, I use the term a lot, that history does what?
Repeat itself.
It erases the mystery.
Erases the mystery?
You learn the history of your family, and the history of the ethnic nation you grew up in, and the history of the greater people and land you grew up in, then the history of the greater world, you're able to see what's going on in the world and who's going on and why. There are energies that want to control the divine energy. They've come up with the most beautiful system. They are smart. Religion. This thing called religion, they've created to control the universe by controlling our minds. Right? Now, I put on these beads, and some will say I'm a santero, if I'm speaking in Spanish. I'm a priest of Oya in the Yoruba. But all that means, Africa never had a religion. Santeria is not a religion. Candomblé is not a religion. Ocarina is not a religion. You know, Lukami is not a religion. It is a way of life. It's a way of understanding nature and a way of understanding the cosmology. And apply it to how we should live our daily life. That's what it's supposed to do. But we've gone astray too. We think it's a religion. And we get to praying to space and wonder why nothing happens. I grew up in a Baptist church. We come from a Baptist church back in Carolina. That's my cousin right there and right there. I was so happy she came over. She told me she's going to come to see y'all before I got here.
She was.
My grandfather, who helped to raise me, is her grand uncle. And his favorite sister is her grandmother. Papa would always talk about Aneta. Grandma died very young. But that was my grandfather's favorite sister. The man never talked about anything, but somehow Etta didn't come up. Because he felt that they had taken her, oh, that's Grandma Mama, right? That's the queen of the family, right? And so, if you look at it, you see it. She was a part of the African and the Chicora Nation in a place called Oak Hill, South Carolina, and Georgetown County. And they used to take us to clean the mounds. You know, we buried our people in the mounds above the ground. And so every year she would lead the delegation twice a year for us to clean the mounds and to reset things. Because on the mounds they had pot, spoon, they had pieces of different things from the house that person used before they left. So what we need to understand though is how are we the world? We are the world, but how are we? We are the divine, but how are we? We are earth. Everybody in here is made up of all the things you've ever eaten in your life and all the things your mother and father ate in their life. When your mother and father gave birth to you by bringing you through sex, bringing that sperm and that egg together, who did they create? They recreated themselves. Because that's all they can recreate, right? And they had been recreated by who? Your grandparents, right? And they had been recreated by their grandparents, right? So who was the first creator? God, right? So who are you then? You're that long-term extended creation of what we call God. That's who you are. And that's what our people are trying to explain with their sacred science. And you see these beads, when we got to the Americas, and they said, you can't play your drums. They said, you can't dance your dance. You can't sing your song. We don't even want you to eat your food. If we see you bring any seeds, we're going to try to destroy those seeds unless it's useful to us. We're going to eat what we want you to eat. But we figured out other ways to recognize rhythm by which you breathe. You can be developing yourself spiritually. But you got to know how to breathe. Right? You got to know what is the cadence. What cadence are you using when you're speaking? Because your speaking cadence also determines the healthiness of your body, the healthiness of your spirit. And so when we are moving about our daily life, we've got to understand that we are a living being. And we carry all of the elements of the divine. I don't like the word creator or creation, because that presupposes the beginning, and nobody can tell me where the beginning is, so there's no concept as a beginning. That's a false word. There's no concept as an end. Those are two false concepts. Okay? Nothing can begin. We have always been. As long as been has been, we have been. Right? And if we can get back to understanding that, we will let people take us off of our balance into their unbalance. Because things are very fundamental. When you wake up in the morning, the one thing that your mind has to be on is how am I going to provide food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for me and my family. That's the foundation aspiration. Now how do I do that? I got to get control of the economic, the politics, and the culture where I live. Now how do I do that? I must learn how to acquire land, get control of some labor, and get control of some resources, and then I can do those other three things. For the purpose of what? Providing the food, the clothing, the shelter, the safety, and security. You can sit back and drum all day and beat the bell all day and shake the legs all day. Ain't a damn thing gonna happen. You get some good music. You can dance a little bit.
That's right.
But the fundamental is supplying that food, clothing, shelter, safety, security for yourself and your people. And that means controlling. Malcolm X called it black nationalism. Somebody asked, Brother Minister Malcolm, what do you mean by black nationalism? Malcolm says when you can control the economic, politics, and culture where you live. That's black nationalism. How do we do that? You gotta get control of some land. You gotta own land. You gotta organize your family and your friends into the labor resources that's gonna run that land and build industry on that land, whether it's in the city or in the countryside. We've kind of lost focus on that piece. We lost focus on that because they got us into just getting a job with them. And we forgot how to build businesses of our own, how to build communities of our own. But if you're going to survive, you're going to have to back the track up a little bit. How am I going to plant my own food so I can eat healthy? We can talk about the GMOs all day and complain about what that rich dude named over there playing with the food and all of this. We can talk about them on Facebook and everything else all day. But if we don't provide an alternative to it, conversation don't mean nothing. The conversation don't mean a thing. We are the most powerful force on the planet. The enemy knows that. We're the one that don't know it. If you just went through America and said, okay, America's one of the greatest countries that was ever built. While the Africans built their telephone, we built their light bulb, we built their elevator, we built their gas mask, we built their electric train, third wheel, we built. There's hardly any technology. Go in the car, the turn signal an African American created, the combustion engine we created, the transmission system we created. We just didn't have the money to put it all together. He had the money he stole from us. He put it all together into a car. But even some of the first cars, automobiles, we built. But they drove us out of business. Because our people weren't wise enough. We ran to General Motors and Ford to work for them because the black man couldn't pay us the same salary. And he went out of business. Because we didn't understand what do for self meant. And Elijah Muhammad came back and tried to tell us how to do for self. Booker T. Washington told us how to do for self. Even Dr. King in the end started telling us how to do for self. we didn't get the message. How the kids call that the 411. We didn't get that 411 that you must do for yourself. I'm here at the Taino chess club. And I used to think I was a bit of a chess player when I was young. I was never that good. I can still play with my grandkids. I keep making sure I teach them. But that you call yourself taino. I was telling you the story about my first daughter's grandma. And Miss Rosa was sick. God bless her soul. She's an ancestor now. And my daughter Anika was speaking in Spanish. And she said, so Anika, your father don't speak in Spanish, so speak in English so your father can understand what we're talking about. And then she said something, you know, Grandma, we're Spanish. She said, no, we know Spanish. We are Taino in Africa. We know Spanish. We got a little bit of Spanish. She said, we're Taino in Africa. This old lady, when I was dating her daughter, who was also an ancestor, back in the 60s, and we was out here in the street. This is before the founding of the Young Lords. We were both here with the founding of the Young Lords. This is before the fund, the National Fund for the Liberation of Puerto Rico, which I was a part of, with Willie, you know, Guillermo, who was one of the strongest revolutionaries we still have living in Cuba now. And his name is Morales. This brother used to be the best bomb maker in New York. He lost all of his fingers, but he worked with 2 thumbs. He escaped from the Manhattan Production Center on the streets with 2 thumbs. They don't know how he did it. So I don't know how he wrote 2 thumbs. But he's in Cuba with Asada, and they've been there since almost around the same time. Most people don't know but Guillermo, because he was the head of the Front for the National Liberation of Puerto Rico. He was one of the founders, along with Joyce Vicencio, Juancho Cruz, Juan Santana, and some others. That was the time when the Latino and the Africans knew we were one people and we should fight together as one. Then something happened when the bourgeois Negroes took over our leadership on both sides and went in these 2 different directions and forgot what the struggle was all about in the beginning. For the freedom to be who we are. I really don't care what the others want to be. They got that right as a living being to be that. But they don't have the right to force me to be that. I have to be what I have to be. I have to be what my nature, the divine universe created me to be. We call, when we understand that, our culture. And that's why our people create these electrics. They're not just pretty beads. You know, Forrest Whitaker was a hell of an actress, right? Actor. Forrest had been a priest in Lucome for 35 years. Wow. But they don't know that. So when I got 8 years ago, when I joined the group, the company with MGM, and they saw me when I was in my electric outside. People were there inside, and I said, no, I'm not doing that. I want everybody to see who I am. I'm not hiding this at all. So I had these made in Brazil, so you get the little thing on the hand that helps us to hang down, so I could wear it on the outside. So they said, you know, Forrest wear nice beads, just like you. I said, we black people, we love beads. And my folks used to go shopping and come back to the plantation and say, oh, hey, Joe, take all the beads you want. And didn't understand that we took those beads that they gave us and created universities, created the whole African university. And so since we couldn't meet to teach one another, and we couldn't build our own buildings, we built our institution through beads. Wow. Shango is a whole school of thought. If this was a college, this would be a department that would be dealing with administration, that would be dealing with management, that would be dealing with organization and structure. That's why he's the king. The symbol is the king. Right? He's the administrator. He's the leader. He's the manager. And all of the tools that go with being a good manager. The story of Shango is about the eradication of the ego, the eradication of arrogance, the eradication of negative dominance. Because in the beginning of the story, that's what he is. He got this power so his chest is stuck out. He tells his brothers, I'm going to make your fight to the death, and whoever wins, I'm going to give you this piece of power. And when he realized one of the brothers had been killed, and realized he's responsible for killing his own brother, then he runs in the forest and commits suicide. But he doesn't commit physical suicide, he commits spiritual suicide. Because the spirit that was him was a negative, evil spirit, based on arrogance and ego and power. And that had to be killed. And so when he's hanging at the tree, who comes? Obakoso. The king is not dead. Who shows up? Oya. And that's my mother. And I'm proud to be Oya. Oya shows up and cuts him down. But he's a changed man now. Why? Because Oya in the metaphor is not a person. She's in the metaphor a woman with beautiful locks and running through the forest, and she can turn into deer and other things. But Oya is the concept of change in the human character. Change in process, dynamic change that changes the human character based on the concept that we give them art, truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, and reciprocity. Right? So Shango becomes the changed man in the metaphor. Because Shango is not a real person. Shango is the idea of power. Shango is the idea of dominance. But power and dominance must be governed by justice. It must be governed by honesty. It must be governed by tolerance. He learns this and goes through this change in his marriage to Oya. But that's not good enough. Oya is changed in process. That's why she's called the wind. The wind blows away the stale and does what? Allow for the fresh to come in, right? But Oya will now marry who? Ogun, the god of iron, the god of war. And this is Ogun, the symbol of Ogun everywhere around our neck. There's a whole institution in studying Ogun, right? But the thing about Ogun that is extraordinary, Ogun represents the process of transformation. Now, Oya represents the process of change that leads to transformation. But it's Ogun that represents the process of transformation itself. And so when you look at the metaphor, you say, what is Ogun? Ogun is the maker of iron, right? But how do you make iron? You take a rock. The rock is full of what? Impurities. You do what with the rock? You put it in the heat. You put it in the fire. To do what? To burn out the impurities. To do what? To transform that rock into something you can use to make tools, to make weapons, called steel. Okay? And so that process of transformation is a part of the school of thought of these instruments around my neck. Each one of these is a college unto itself. Obatala, the beautiful white Obatala. But so Obatala is wisdom. But Obatala is more than wisdom. Obatala is the whole concept of intellectualism. Obatala is the concept of gaining knowledge. Knowledge leads to what? Understanding. Understanding leads to what? Enlightenment. Enlightenment leads to what? Wisdom. And so you got a whole school of thought, and that's nothing. Each of these represent that. And then this is my favorite. When I want to scare white folks when I go to work, I'll wear this one. I don't wear white shirt. They only wonder, why are you wearing this red and black necklace all the time? I told them, that's Issue Lakeland. He opens the way for me. When I walk in here, Issue has opened that door wide. But Issue represents the moving of conflict out of your way, which means you should spend more time meditating. You should spend more time focusing. You should spend more time studying. And you should never go approaching things when you don't know what the thing is. Do some investigating. Know what's beyond that door before you go through the door. That's what Issue makes sure of. So our ancestors knew that we can't have this meeting in the open, but we can create symbols of all of these ideas, and we assign colors to them. And they see us as dancing and drumming with our pretty beads when they don't understand that we brought our entire culture and embed them in the Alekes. And this becomes the university for our people, without the enemy even know we're having this kind of conversation. Because it's a conversation, even today, they don't know how to get into this conversation, right? They don't know how to understand it. Now in Black America, we couldn't do this. Because this was a white state. This was a majority white nation, and we were a minority. So what we had to do is take the same ideas and embed them in the church. And the main church we embedded them in was the Baptist church. Contrary to the history of the liberal North teaches, the Baptist church is older than the AME church. Okay, the Baptist church is founded in Savannah, Georgia, as the African Baptist Church. some of them still exist in South Carolina and Georgia, in 1749. And what the people they did was that they took all the ideas that was African, studied the Bible, which is a fundamentally African document that someone else copied, but they understood the sense of it enough to know how to re-hide the African image, you understand? Because that's mine anyway, but they don't know that that's mine. But I can hide myself right beside it and they'll never recognize me. So when I was a little boy, on this place called Acadia Plantation down in Georgetown, South Carolina, when everybody in my group got to be 13, we were called into the church. We were all going to Sunday school and stuff anyway, but now we were called into this one group, and we had to pick a church father. In Africa, that's your uncle, right? And you had to pick a church, the girls pick a church mother, and that's the queen mother, and that's who you be choosing it. Now this is the whole African thing, because you won't find this in any white church, but you find this in the black church. And for that whole year, all of us who were 13, we were taught about God and about renewal and spirit and things like that. And at the end of that year, we went to the moaning bench. Now, when I got initiated into Yoruba, I didn't go to a moaning bench. They blindfolded me. I was in the forest. I was in a hut on the ground. But in the Baptist church, you're not blindfolded. You got to close your eyes, and you're on your knees on a bench. And you stay there for 7 days, just like I stayed on the ground for 7 days. And you're fasting for that 7 days. And your family, you look like you went to that morning bench. So that on that morning bench, you go into church like about 4 in the evening, and it lasts until about 8 in the evening. And everybody's family sing their song over their child, clap their rhythm over their child. Remember, clapping and foot stumping are drum rhythms that we recall in our head. So we couldn't play the drums, but we could clap the drums. Or we could stamp the drums. Or what we end up with is tap dancing, which is drum rhythms. And so, but they don't know this. But our people used to know that, except we done forgot because we ain't studied the history. Right? But that's how we were retaining ourselves in the midst of this occupation in a white dominant nation called America. Okay? And so after my family, they must have knew I was going to have a kind of rough life. So the song they sang over me was called Save Me, Lord, Save My Soul from the Burning Hell. They hit the nail right. Save me, Lord, save me, Lord, save me. Save me, Lord, save my soul from burning hell. I had no idea what they were singing until I went through my burning hell. Oh, those old people knew what I was going to be going into, right? And then on a certain, I think on the 4th day, I got up. You got to get possessed. And they call it getting the Holy Ghost. But in Yoruba land, we call it spirit possession. In Voodoo, we call it spirit possession. And Ganamble, all of this is in Zamburia, we call it spirit possession. But they call it getting the Holy Ghost. You don't know where you are. You just know, next thing you know, somebody holding you down, and you done dance, shout, jump up on the bench. You've been all over the place for about 20 minutes, you know, and they get you calmed down, and they're fanning you, and they're giving you a little something to drink. So you know you made it. You made it over to the other side. You got initiated back into the family. But they didn't explain it to you like that because they couldn't. Because that's why some white man put your head off because you got there talking about this that way. So you were told that you had gotten the Holy Ghost and you went over to Jesus. You went to the Jordan River. So you came from one side of the Jordan to the other side of the Jordan. And when you die, you go back across the Jordan River. They had the metaphor laid out because they knew what they were trying to do. And by picking you at age 13, if you read Jomo Kenyata's book, it's called Facing My Kenya, he tells you about the age group rights. So that by grabbing all of this group at 13, that was the African age group ritual that happened every year in every African village in Africa. And those old people remembered it. They said, you can block me from having my drum, you can block me from dancing, you can block me from singing, and then you give me your church as a sanctuary so I can go and hide in there and do all the African dance I want to do and call this shouting. Right? And they go, hold on back, you can sure shout, right? Then they're doing the airway dance, the Yoruba dance, the African dances. But the problem is, we've forgotten all of this. We forgot what the ancestors did. We forgot what the elders was trying to say. So I'm telling you now, because I was one who condemned the church completely out of hand. Big mistake. I should have condemned Christianity as a theology, but never condemned the church. Because we lived in there and we hid our things. We did the same thing in the Catholic Church. You in the Catholic Church in Europe, you didn't go with all and light all these candles. They copied that from here. Okay? That comes out of the Spanish-speaking, taino African community, both in Central South America and in the Caribbean. And if you go and see what's going on in the Catholic Church, go, wait a minute. I just went in the Buddhist shrine in Haiti last week and they did the very same thing. I got to the door and I'm washing my hands. I'm dealing with issue and don't even know I'm dealing with issue. I'm dealing with Ogun and don't even know I'm dealing with Ogun. Because I got another name. They're Saint this and they're Saint that. Then I go up front and I'm dealing with the ancestors. I light my candle and I'm dealing with the ancestors. And they tell us don't do this. And we do it every day. And don't know that we're doing it. That's why history will erase the mystery. And let you see these things and realize you have not lost your way as much as you think you lost it. It's been right there in front of you. Right where the ancestors hid it. But because you didn't know the history, you couldn't recognize yourself even though you were looking in a mirror. Okay? But once you learn the history, and you can recognize the habits that you have. Why do I cook my food this way? Why do I like this type of seasoning? Why do I like this type of combination of peppers and onions and beans? Why do I do it? Because there's something, the food isn't just good digestion, the food is also what? Medicine, right? And the way you prepare that food and what you put in that pot determines how your whole system is going to be reacting. And so all of that is a part of your greater culture. The music simply helps you to tell the story to yourself and one another for memory's sake. Because when you remember what that is. Members, this is a member. You are members of this group, right? If I tear y'all all apart and put you in different buildings and you no longer remember, I've got to now come and bring y'all back to this building and tell you about the Taino Chess Club and put a chess club. Then what am I doing? I'm remembering you. You have to do the same thing in your mind. You have to remember yourself. Bring all of the pieces of your ancestors back together. Because at the end of the day, the greatest story ever told is the one you will tell to yourself. When you tell yourself that you are your ancestors. You are your ancestors. They died, but they didn't go nowhere because they did what? When they gave birth to you, they gave birth to themselves, so they recreated themselves before they died. Then they had time to sit around and train you to be what you're supposed to be when that part of you has gone. But you're the same person who gave birth to yourself. You're Enoch and your mom. All right? You look like it.
All the way, right?
I swear. So when they gave birth to you, they gave birth to themselves. You gave birth to him. When you were gone, you're still here. That's you. But he has to remember you in his mind in order to be that part of you that's important to constantly display and transform others. That's our culture. This is what our culture is about, knowing the sacred science. Right? Everything else is tools. The clothing is the tool. The drum is the tool. The dancing is the tool. The music is the tool. The eleke is the tool. But the idea of knowing I'm God having a human experience, that is the most fundamental of the thing that one has to understand. Our greatest ancestor and our first ancestor is God itself. Nothing exists but God. The symbol on my back says Jianyami. None but God. None but God exists. I'll show y'all again. It's a pretty symbol. Most of you see it. It says none but God exists. If only God, and that's true, if something is omnipotent, omnipresent, omnipotent, and supreme, it occupies all space and all time. Nothing else can exist but it. So then what are we? Expressions of aspects of that existence. Okay. We're tiny little pieces of God. We're like cells in God's body. And each of the cell has its own peculiar function. My finger is made up of billions of cells. But everybody know what they're supposed to do. Because if they get confused, my finger disappears. Because it looks like one thing. It's only one because they're working together. If they get confused and stop working together, the finger disappears. It doesn't exist. And that's what has happened to our peoples. We've gotten confused. We are the majority of America, and we got people still calling us minorities. How can we be minorities? You know, every Latino is an African indigenous person. Every African American is an African indigenous person. If you combine those those two groups, we're the majority of America already.
Absolutely.
But then bringing all our people coming in from Central South America, from Africa, we are the superman, and that's what they don't want us to know. They keep playing, you're the minority, and we buy it. We're the people of color. Damn right, we're the people of color. We know we're the people of color, but when it comes to putting us together, you don't put us together as people of color. So you make up 1%, you make up this percent. No, all that percentage should be together. We are the majority of this nation. We built the nation. We maintain the nation. They know that. But the psychology of language and politics and intellectualism and the universe and others to make everybody think just the opposite. And we fall in the trap. I know I belong to the majority nation in this country. And they'll never let me think or feel anything else. I know who I am. I know this is my land. This is my land before. And get me not wrong, the European is an African with a genetic problem. We understand it. Some say, oh no, they can't be the same, and then we start about Neanderthals. Stop being foolish. Understand the science of the universe. Some of us got caught in the ice, and most of us stayed in the sun. And if you understand the dynamics of hundreds of thousands of years of a process, the genetic survival, you will do what you have to do. You don't have to do it consciously. This organism will do it for itself. I don't need melanin anymore. Why? Because melanin is going to cause me to freeze to death. All right? I need a way to absorb as much vitamin D and sunlight as I can. Okay? I don't need a big blurred out nose because I don't need to breathe in all that cold air. My brain going to freeze up. I need to narrow it down so I can warm the air that's coming in. I don't need the little curly hair on my head that would cool my brain because I'm down there in the sun. I need long hair that will cover my neck. Remember, everything that runs your body comes through your neck. If you can't cover that up, your butt's gonna die. Okay? So there's all kinds of things that happens genetically. But that's not what the problem is. The problem is when you're caught in that situation, you declare war on nature because you feel nature have declared war on you. And we haven't been able to convince the European to stop it. The war you had with nature is over. You're not even in the ice any longer. And we can all live in the world. And like we see the argument going on about Kamala Harris, is she black or is she not black? That's a stupid argument. So what are you going to say? Du Bois wasn't black? Frederick Douglass wasn't black? Booker T. Washington wasn't black? Lena Horne wasn't black? Etta James wasn't black? You know what I'm saying? When you get stupid, you get real stupid. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
My wife is from Trinidad. Her mom is from Southern India. Mabel is about as dark as the brother here. My wife is as light as my sister here. You know. Now my wife ain't black. You know. People don't understand. Even Kamala says that her mom spoke Tamil. If you know who speaks Tamil, it's the Dalit people of the South. They're the blackest black in India. Right? And they're the largest population of India. They're not just in the South. The South, they're predominant, but they're in the center of the country. They're in Pakistan, they're in Bangladesh. They're everywhere. You know, when they left Africa, that's where they stopped. Some went on to Australia, others went on to other places and set up their civilizations through the centuries. You've got to understand history to erase the European mystery that divides us in these tiny little pieces. Because even for those, when I was young, my animosity against the white community used to be a vicious one. Because most people don't really know who I am do with it all. At 21 years old, Malcolm X gets killed. I took over. How many people in here know that? I'm Al-Hajj Amin Shahid.